Hi everyone, welcome to this learner webinar. And I see we only have 4 participants as yet. Yes, everybody today. Actually, we have 3. I make 4. Ravi Chandra?
Hello.
It was beginning to get very lonely here, so maybe
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. It was getting lonely here, so I made you a panelist.
Oh, thank you.
Are you able to come on video?
Just a minute. Let me take that out.
Is that, how do you say your name? Is it Kukev?
Ravi.
Yeah, yours is, how do you say yours? Is it just Ravi or Ravi Chandra? What can I call you?
Ravi Chandran, you can call me Ravi.
Okay, thank you.
And yes, my name is Kokap.
Kokap, okay. Right, I made you panelist also. Are you okay with that, Kokap?
Okay.
That's cool, right? We're all learning, so that's cool, right?
Okay.
Okay, show your face. Can you come into a video?
Let me see if I can. I only see the microphone.
At the bottom of your screen where it says video, it says stop video. Maybe one of those settings there will give you show video.
Let me see. Normally it's next to the microphone sign. I
That's
only
right.
have the microphone sign now.
Sneha loves being on video. So Sneha, you can also be a panelist today.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can't see you though. I can see a lovely photo.
Yeah, I am at work right now.
You are?
I'm at work right now. So yeah, I will try and participate as much as I can given the situation. Thank you though.
Okay. So we'll just wait a few seconds and start our webinar.
Okay.
Who else wants to be panelist? Anybody from the participants? Raise your hand or indicate, send me a message and I will promote you. Nobody? Okay, so we got 4 panelists today. Our participants are coming in slower today. So we'll just give them another few seconds and we'll start. Anil, do you want to be a panelist? Send me a message, Anil. I think that's the only time I can hear you. Because now I can't even see you. I and you. You're on mute. Okay, let's welcome everyone. Hi everyone, and welcome to the August Learner Webinar. For a moment I was going to say July, the months are going by so fast. But it's the August Learner Webinar. And as you are aware, we started 2 months ago talking about all the core competencies again, starting with competency 2, establishing the agreement. And last month, we kept focus on CC3, building trust and intimacy with the client, and coaching presence. And today we focus on core competency 5, 6, and 7, active listening, powerful questioning, and direct communication. And let's see how we go. If we need more time, we'll spend a little bit more time on it next month when we talk about competency 8, creating awareness. And I know that many of you have been requesting that we open a discussion on competency 8. Next month is our chance to do that. And if you want to be panelists for that conversation beforehand, you're most welcome to send me an email. And of course, next month is September. In October, we will discuss the last 3 core competencies, 9, 10, and 11. Okay, today's topic, all about how we listen, question, and communicate to the client. Listening and questioning is, of course, communicating. How we listen and respond to our clients. Anybody wants to ask any questions, please feel free, type it on the chat box. Who's gonna? Ravi, can you keep an eye on the chat box? Did you do that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Right, my last offer. Anybody else wants to join the panel? Anyone? No? Okay, you can type into the chat box. Okay, I see one there. Okay, that's from you, Ravi. Okay, so let's start our discussion and talk a bit about active listening. Type your answers into the chat box. Feel free to type there as we explore reflective questioning around active listening. So here's the first question. What are we listening for? Sounds like an obvious question, right? But seriously, what are we listening for? Panelists, feel free to speak your mind on this question. What are we listening for?
If you consider the, hey Cindy, this is Sneha. If you consider the workplace culture and you're a manager or a senior manager coaching your direct report or someone on the team, you are listening for potential.
It's lovely, listening for potential. And we got some nice answers coming out in the chat. Listening for emotions, listening for content and relatedness, of course. But the coachee is saying and feeling where the client is coming from. Of course, we're listening for the client for the client's perspective around what they are bringing in the story they're telling. Verbal and non-verbal cues, yeah. To know content, of course. What else? What are we listening for? So, of course, we're listening for the words, right? And listening for So this word, we're listening for the totality of the client, meaning the words and a bit of what you're saying, what's below the surface, what they are saying, and what's beneath the surface. So you're listening for words, you're listening for emotions, you're paying attention to body language and shifts in energy and anything else you're noticing that's showing up. Absolutely alignment. You're also listening for alignment. Is what emotion showing up, is that aligned to what the client is saying, or is there differences there that you're directly picking up? Yeah, we're listening for language. So it's pretty obvious that you know we are listening to our client. But what about the coach? Are we also listening to what's going on inside us? What do you think? Panelists, what do you think? We listen to ourselves sometimes, right?
Mm.
Yeah? How does that show up in coaching? How do you think we bring that forward in coaching?
I think we listen to ourselves when we talk to the client. Our understanding, if we understand the situation and the direction, because we somehow direct the discussion. So I think we listen to ourselves on about where to take it.
Absolutely. So it sounds like we're listening to our own intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Ourselves, yeah. And then how do we bring this out? So we're listening to our own intuitions. Last month we spoke about coaching presence and words like I'm noticing, I'm curious about, I'm listening, or I'm hearing.
I think it comes out with the questions that we ask. If we are really listening to our clients, the questions we ask come out of what they are explaining, and also kinds of covers the underlying assumptions. We go beyond what the words, and I think it is reflected by our questions.
Absolutely. Ravi, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I think the amount of attention and the paraphrasing what we do, which enables the client to get in some more
Your
clarity,
line, your
a
internet connection is.
reconfirmation.
Oh, okay, now you're stable. It felt quite unstable and we couldn't clearly hear you, Ravi. You want to repeat that?
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning, we give our full attention
Yeah.
and do the paraphrasing for clarity from both the sides, both in terms of coach and the client, which gives a reconfirmation about the state, the feel, the mood, and the intent.
So paraphrasing is one way of listening and reflecting off what we are listening for and getting clarity around that, right?
Yeah.
Anything else the panelists want to contribute? How do we bring it across to the client that we are indeed listening to them? So yes, paraphrasing is one way. How else? How do we bring it across to the client that we are listening to them?
Acknowledging.
Definitely. In your own presence, right? In the way, in our present, are you showing up with presence in that moment? Absolutely, allowing them to speak more than, of course, what coach speaks. And you've got to be careful about how we paraphrase and when we paraphrase. We'll talk a bit more about that later. When do we paraphrase?
Okay.
So, coming back to this question, what are we listening for? So we're listening for clients and the totality of the client, and we are listening to the coach and what intuitively is showing up in the coach and how coach brings us forward. And we're also listening to the dynamics of the conversation between coach and client. Somebody said that earlier on, how is it landing on client? So we listen to the client, we're listening to what's going on inside us intuitively, and of course we're listening and paying attention to dynamics between coach and client. So it sounds like coach is doing a lot of listening, but it only feels like that in the beginning when you're starting to practice coaching skills, because after a while that shows up quite naturally, right? Or not? Does it show up naturally? What do you think? To all our participants and learners on the call, what do you think? Does listening show up naturally or it requires some effort?
I think it requires some effort.
Yeah, it does, right?
Yeah.
Because how often we get into the space where while we're listening, we start to wonder what is the next question we can ask. And the next question pops into our head and then 10 others pop in. Then we play this game of which one do we ask?
Yeah.
So before we share any markers here and talk about this in detail, I have another question. And the question is an open-ended one, so I'd like all our learners to share what they are noticing, or I invite you to share. What are your tips? What are your best tips for listening? In a coaching conversation, what are your best tips for listening? Yeah, be present and avoid distractions, absolutely. What else? What is your tips? Ania, what is your tips for listening?
For me, the environment matters a lot. Sometimes when, let's say I'm in my office and I'm having a conversation, I feel the most relaxed. If it is a different environment that I'm not used to conducting the conversations in, if it's new, if it's a different place than where I usually am, I start to feel a little bit more conscious. So I try to avoid being in such environments. I try to stick to the environment that I have always known I am most comfortable in. And that helps me focus on everything else other than on myself, which is the whole point. Focus on the client instead of whether I'm comfortable or not. This is a new space. I cannot really think of anything else. That's from you.
Absolutely. Well said there, Sneha. Lovely sharing. Anil, for you, what is your tips for how to listen? How do you listen to client? What works for you? So Debbie, what you typed onto the chat, imagine it's only the client, you are just not there. That's really quite an advanced skill, right? Yeah, what do you think? It's quite advanced when you get to that stage of detachment. What else? Okay, so let's pay attention to some of the markers, right? And as we go along, you pick up and ask your questions. So here it is, active listening. Right. I'll just try to stop it there. Okay. So look at this. Remember, I was asking you, what are we listening for? We're not just listening to the client, we're also listening to what's going on inside us. So look at this marker, the coach's questions and observations. So obviously you're going to be really listening to observing from you and observing what's in the client. So the coach's questions and observations are customized. It's a key word here, customized, by using what the coach has learned about who the client is and the client situation. Meaning, who is this client and this goal that this client is working on. So the who and the what. But the coach's questions and observations are customized. Hence, we can see that it's not, the question is not something you can bring prior to the session and go, here's my list of 20 questions. No matter what the client says, I will just roll them in these 20 questions. Right? You can't do that, right? Questions show how. In that moment, as the client is talking and as the coach is observing. And that's not something easy. That's something you get used to and you build skills around over time. So remember that. If you're not doing that now, build skills around it. Over time, it just gets better and better. Coach inquires about or explores the client's use of language. Somebody on the chat mentioned that, the client's use of language. And an example there, the client is repeatedly saying things like, I'm useless, I have no confidence, and there's a repetition around particular words. Repetition, you can pick up a pattern. So your coach inquires about or explores the client's use of language. Number 3, coach inquires about, explores the client's emotions. I think you all are good with that, exploring what emotions you're noticing showing up in client. Or even just inviting or asking the client, how are they feeling as they're sharing whatever they are. Marker 4 here, coach inquires about or explores the client's tone of voice, pace, or inflection as appropriate. A good example here, you know, sometimes the client in the beginning of the session will talk fast and tell you the entire story at quite a fast pace. You know, they just want to get through everything and tell you everything that's coming out or that's playing on their mind. And it's somewhere in the middle of the session or past the middle, you notice that the client has gone quite reflective and they have slowed down. Have you had experiences like that? client talk fast, and then they slow down. Then you want to inquire about that. I mean, that's really something that gems are hidden in that. So you've got to ask about that. You know, earlier on, I heard you talking quite fast as you were telling the story, and it now seems you've become quieter and more reflective. Or something like that, however is appropriate to phrase it. So when you check in with the client, what's going on or what they are reflecting on. Six, coach inquires about, explores clients' behaviors. When behaviors are beginning to show up, somebody spoke about alignment. This alignment or something there that's showing up that you feel you have a curiosity about or you feel should be explored. Coach inquires about or explores the client's behavior. Six, coach inquires about or explores how the client perceives his or her world. A good example here is when clients tell themselves a particular story and you want to check with them how much of the story is still holding true for them or which part of the story they still believe in or they still hold accountable to or responsible for, and which part is not serving them. So you begin to explore different dynamics around this story on how they perceive their world. Coach is quiet and gives client time to think. That's a big one, right? Coach is quiet and gives client time to think. And I say it's a big one because it's a very essence of the power that something is changing for clients. And we all know that the coaching conversation is thought-provoking and creative. And in order to bring out potential or something there, some change or whatever the client's looking for, then we got to give client time to think. So I'm going to stop screen share and we can take any questions. Any discussion points? Any questions from you? To the panel, any questions you want to raise as a talking point? Yes, Gangapriya, the markers are indeed very nuanced. They're well written. I see anymore, it's like a kind of bias for the markers, you know, like, which I do. Any questions from our participants? Any questions you have, discussion points, anything standing out there for you on active listening? Okay, my panel is very quiet today. Let's talk about powerful questioning and we'll come back to discussion points. Right, powerful questioning. Okay. Now, powerful questioning, I mean, we already spoke a bit about this in talking about active listening. Again, the questions or whatever you are sharing shows up in a customized way, meaning in that conversation, drawing from what the client is saying or how the client is responding. So let's look at this, marker for marker. The coach asks questions about the client, his way of thinking, assumptions, values, beliefs, needs, wants, etc. So coach is asking questions about the client's way of thinking, assumptions, values, beliefs, whatever is showing up. Coach is questioning about that. Number two, coach's questions help the client explore beyond client's current thinking to new or expanded ways of thinking about themselves. To explore beyond. So what does this mean for you? Explore beyond. I highlighted it because look how it repeats itself. Marker 2 is explore beyond clients' current thinking to new expanded ways of thinking about themselves, the who of the person. Marker 3 talks about new or expanded ways of thinking about the situation, meaning the goal they're working on. So 2 is about the who, 3 is about the what. But the essence here is to explore beyond. And in simple language, that means if you keep the conversation quite surface, then the client will go home in the same way they came, right? They would have just offloaded, told you the old story, and left in a very same way that they came. Not much going beyond. So some questions here we can deduce as to be evocative, provocative. Some other words? Thought-provoking. What other words you can think of that describes questioning, questions that go below the surface? And if you look at the next marker, I'm going to pick up the discussion point in a few minutes. If you look at the next marker, the coach's questions help the client explore beyond current thinking towards the outcome they desire, the goal they're working on. So you're asking questions about the person. You're asking questions about the situation. And the situation, most of the time you will notice, will be systemic. There'll be other dynamics showing up. And then you're asking questions about the outcome, what they set for themselves from the session. Now 5, 6, and 7 are pretty self-explanatory markers, meaning 5. Coach asks clear, direct, primarily open-ended questions, one at a time. Listen, it's primarily open-ended. So if you're asked just a few closed questions, it's not the end of the world. It's not such a bad thing. And sometimes a closed question gets an answer that's quite open. It's not always a yes. Closed questions are not always yes and no. One at a time. Of course, ask questions one at a time. And again, at a pace that allows for thinking and reflections by the client. Because we're making the assumption that questions are powerful, right? The coach is asking powerful questions, and so there's got to be time to think. Coach's questions use the client's language and elements of the client's learning style and frame of reference. And 7, questions are not leading. They do not contain a conclusion or direction. Right, any questions? Even if you want to pick up marker 7 and open a discussion on that, that's quite a meaty conversation to have. What exactly is leading questions?
I have one.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yes, we're also discussing it in class recently. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can
Yes.
hear you.
Okay, great. When exploring beyond the client's current thinking on the situation or themselves, for example, a client might come up with to work on a topic saying that I am in a dilemma to pick between this and that. But for example, if the coach notices that those two may not be the only options there, the coach can ask the client to explore beyond those two. But how does it work with making it not leading? And we were saying in class that we need to approach it carefully, because in order to help the client expand beyond her or his current thinking, how can we make sure that we're not leading them to a particular aspect?
Absolutely. So I have quite a simple example around that, right? So if you can imagine the scenario, this is quite a common one, where client comes and says, you know, I'm not happy with I set myself a goal of going to gym 3 times a week and I'm not keeping with it. And, you know, so I want to see what's going on there. And of course, it's important for me to stick to my timetable of gym 3 times a week for all these reasons and talk to you about that. And while they're talking, you can get a sense that, you know, this client's been trying to go to gym for 6 months and it hasn't done it, hasn't got there, and bringing the same topic up again. And, you know, in exploring options and checking, you know, what other options is available to the client, the client could do something, you know, some kind of activity, start with a gym or something like that. And you say, coach says something like, now this is a story that really happened. Coach says something that, you know, my friend is really into sport and started playing soccer, football. And he loves it so much and he's really lost a lot of weight. So why don't you try, you know, how open are you to trying maybe, you know, a sport would work for you? And there's some excitement in the client and they begin to talk about it. And coach and client now spend the next 10 minutes or 15 minutes talking about football, the advantages of it and where they train and how often they train, the friend trains. Now can you see that the coach's question there led in a particular direction and continued in that direction. So be careful about that when you ask a leading question, and it is to serve the client's conversation in that moment, what's going on. And you're not leading it by continuing in your direction.
Yeah, okay.
Coaches, what do you want to say? I mean, all our participants on the calls, what do you want to say or contribute to that? I think I'll stop screen share.
Maybe I'm just thinking on this same example, what would have been a good question to ask to allow the person to consider other options?
Yeah, wonderful. And if you notice a conversation is going in perhaps a leading way, it's okay to also ask the client, you know, we are going off topic a bit because this is what you wanted from the session, and we've kept quite a bit of focus on da-da-da-da-da. So, you know, how are we doing? You know, should we redirect and go back into what you wanted? And perhaps you could pick this up at another time.
Mm.
You're not totally putting client off or, actually stopping the conversation, but you're doing some kind of reframing because, of course, you notice client got excited
Mm.
about this new direction of conversations.
Yes. Thanks.
Participants, what do you think? Sneha, any contributions from you on leading questions?
I think this directly relates to listening competency, because if you're not actively listening, your brain is still working in the background. So you are dissecting and deducing everything based on your experience and your own thoughts, and you're trying to apply your ideas to whatever responses you're getting from the client. So as an example, it could be, let's say the client says, oh, I had a bad performance review with my manager and I'm not sure what are the reasons behind it. And an example of a close question or a leading question could be, well, have you tried to have a follow-up conversation with the manager? Instead, the coach could be like, I see that it is affecting you right now. What have you done so far to resolve the situation? What else could you do? That would be more open-ended questions. And it's so difficult because if your brain is working and you're not really emphasizing and your brain is working, you're getting all these ideas that you want the client to know, but that is going to interrupt the flow of the coaching process. And at that moment, the flow is more important than your ideas as a coach.
That's a lovely example and scenario you raised there. Yeah, lots of different elements come into that. Lovely example.
Thank you, Cindy.
Yeah, because it's so easy to get drawn into where the drama, where the client wants to go and coach goes there with client and forgets about what client really came to the session for and wanted out of the session. It's so easy because client feels emotion and coach wants to absolutely help out there and may just quick go into the same direction with client. Absolutely, that's good. Let's see, Madhu. So there are some leading questions, right? Of course, there has to be, right? Like what does client want from the session? We help them clarify, narrow it down. It's part of the agreement. So within part of the agreement, some questions help the client gain that clarity on what they want from the session and can come across as leading, like measures of success. What exactly will tell the client the session is successful for them or how they are progressing in the session. And you may have noticed many clients really cannot answer that question just like that. You've got to help them. Like just ask a client out of the blue, what is your measures of success for the session? Oh, what? What are you talking about? Don't say it like that. They will go, I don't understand that question. Can you say that again? So some questions like for establishing an agreement and for support, accountability are questions that coach would ask, but it's part of the process of coaching, learning and developing and helping your client work on the goal that they wanted. Of course, that I can't see your name, got glasses on. Is it Debra? Devabhata. Okay, that's a good question. Can leading questions work when a critical learning needs to be anchored? What do you think? Let's open that conversation. Can leading questions work when a critical learning needs to be anchored? Participants, what do you think? To the panelists, what do you think?
I think we have to be very cautious when we when there is like a critical learning that the clients need to have, because if it is leading, we are taking them to a place that is based on our assumptions, and it might not open up their word, like, because they know their situation better, and it doesn't help them explore all the variables in their case.
Yeah. Absolutely. We do ask that. What new learnings did you get from this discussion? We also ask, what are you learning about yourself? As you reflected on that, did any new learnings show up for you? Or what are you realizing about yourself? So we go beneath to embed the words into some kind of new awareness, new learning, new strengths, or whatever new is showing up. And of course, we further embed that, like what would you like to do in the next few days to further embed this learning? We'll talk more about that in creating awareness. So we've got a few more minutes to go. Let's share screen again and do marker 7. So coaches, as you continue coaching, pay attention to when you notice if you're asking a leading question and moving in that direction. And then ask yourself, how could you have brought it back after the session? Ask yourself, what could you have done differently to stop leading in particular directions? And pay attention also to these words, going, exploring, and going beyond. Okay, marker 7, or core competency 7, direct communication. So you find a lot of words on direct communication is repeated. Active listening, powerful questions, coaching presence, and the similar words are repeated here. Marker 1, the coach shares observations, intuitions, comments, thoughts, and feelings to serve the client's learning or forward movement. Notice observations, intuitions, comments, thoughts, and feelings. The coach shares. So the coach is paying attention to their own intuitions or their own thoughts, and then bringing it out in a question or in a notice or curious about. You say it and then you bring it. 2, coach shares observations, intuitions, comments, thoughts, feelings without any attachment to them being right. We'll pick that up in a minute after I stop share. Coach uses the client's language, or language that reflects the client's way of speaking. Coach's language is clear and concise. We spoke about that in powerful questioning. Questions are clear and concise, one at a time. Coach allows the client to do most of the talking. And the last one, coach allows the client to complete speaking without interrupting. unless there is a stated coaching purpose to do so. So I'm going to stop screen share and let's talk about some of the things that are showing up here for you. Like the one, coaches, observation, intuition, comments, thoughts, and feelings without any attachment. So first, any questions showing up for you? Or any points there you want to discuss? So even though it's direct communication, it's still with the greatest positive regard for the clients, right? Still non-judgmental, still in a learning space, in an intuitive space. Anything you want to raise, any questions you have, you can type it into the chat. Right, to my panelists. Have you ever felt when you were coaching and you checked something in with a client or asked a question, it didn't land well, but you felt attached to it? Have you ever felt in that space? Like when you said to client, I noticed a belief showing up here. And client says, no, I don't think so. And there's no beliefs here. Have you ever felt attached to something like that? I'm still audible, right? I am?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. I just want to know. Just checking.
Yeah.
So coaches, what do you think? In my 14 years of coaching, I many times felt attached to something. I didn't say it, but I definitely felt attached to it and had to go, after the session, work through it, what I was attached to. But I did. Especially as a new coach, I thought that was a really good question, but of course it didn't land well with that client. And I can't understand why it didn't land well. But that's part of our learning journey, right? As we progress and go along, those moments make the biggest learning for us, and not to get attached. So anything else you want to discuss around markers 5, 6, and 7? Anything?
I'm trying to put a basic question.
Mm-hmm.
So the behavior is a broad spectrum as such. So if I have to observe all of them at the moment, may not be maybe not be visible, and or whatever is visible at that point in time as a behavior pattern, or it's a behavior, not even a pattern, but I've not seen it happening again and again. So how do I differentiate it? It's a very reactional way of expression, or how to differentiate the habit from a spontaneous way of responding?
That's for coach or for client?
For both.
Client, okay. For coach, I mean to say for coach. Or are you saying for both?
For both.
That's a bit of a tricky one, right, Ravindra, for coach, especially for coach? Because we do sometimes, on some parts of coaching, get into the habit of saying some things.
Mm.
And you're right, it is only we may not notice it consciously until when we reflect on it, maybe sometimes even months later or years later, and we will question ourselves, oh, why did we do that? Snare, you want to say anything about that? Or should I ask you, Snare, what was your biggest insights on CC 6, 7, 5, 6, and 7?
My biggest insight, actually, I would say the biggest application was for myself. And I have applied those competencies with the greatest impact, I know for sure, when I was self-coaching, when I was coaching myself, whenever I was stuck. The fact about listening or asking powerful questions is that we never get taking time to do it for us. We get so busy doing it with our clients or doing it at work, but how much time do I spend with myself, listening to what my thoughts and my beliefs are, questioning them, challenging them, and looking for that aha moment within myself. I did not know how to do that until I went through the competencies and I understood it's not just the reaction that is going to get you self-aware. Sometimes you need to put the reaction aside. Sometimes you need to put your actions and ideas aside and just sit down, ask yourself the right questions, and listen to what you're saying. And that was the biggest gift for those competencies, was for self-coaching for myself.
Yeah. And you're communicating quite well. And I see some of your videos. It's beautifully done. You highlight all those coaching moments really well.
Thank you so much, Cindy. And one of the outcome of such sessions, such self-coaching sessions, was the video, because that is a way for me to capture what I have learned about myself, what I've learned about the situation, and capturing that it goes well into the action, right? Designing action, and that is one form of action for my self-coaching that I make.
Absolutely. Kokep, you want to say something?
Yes, for me, I'm experimenting on, for example, if I ask a question and the answer, if I feel that we're not going to the right direction, I try to pause and ask the client how it is going, or if we're on track, or so if I feel that I need to actively listen more, it brings me back. So I try to check with the client once in a while if I'm on the right track. So I think that's working well with me.
That's a lovely insight and sharing. And stay in that space. If you're doing that, keep doing that. It's also very masterful.
Yeah, it's a process, a learning process.
Yeah, that's really lovely to check in with clients on where you are in the journey, where they are, and how they are progressing in the session. And that talks right up front to CC 2.5, and that of course links to the back-end markers, to the learning, to CC8, the learning journey for client. very insightful on how you manage progress. Okay, let's round up. Ravindra, do you want to say anything, or I see you type something there? Customized questions and observations, insightful. So coaches, what you want to say in a word or two, what is standing out for you from today's session? Anything that you are leaving with? You can type it into the chat box. What's standing out for you in competencies 5, 6, and 7? Anything? Nobody's typing today. Oh. Ah, there we go. Great. If you want to copy the chat for yourself, just click on those 3 dots, that little icon, and where it says save the chat, just allow yourself to save it. You click on save chat. Thank you all, and thank you to my panelists. It was lovely partnering with you. Thank you to everyone who attended and contributed. Remember, next month we are talking about the big one, called Competency 8, creating awareness. Now, were we supposed to give out a password today? Yes or no? For the CC points, were we supposed to do a password? I'm not sure about that. Yes, Sneha, what were you saying?
Not aware of that, Cindy.
Okay, I don't think it's for the learner webinars, right? I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
No, it is there. Normally used to give.
Right, I'll just check with Magda because I don't think she's on the call today, and I forgot to ask her up front if there is a password. But we'll get it to you. Don't worry, we'll find a way to do so.
Okay.
Thank you all for attending today's webinar, and I will see you all next month. Happy coaching. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Cindy. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.